Are Moonshiners a scam? How do they avoid being arrested? Introduction. The term moonshiner often evokes images of rural, clandestine figures, typically associated with the Prohibition era of the 1920s. Historically, moonshining referred to the illegal production of distilled spirits, usually homemade liquor, such as whiskey or rum, often crafted in remote locations to evade law enforcement. But is moonshining inherently a scam, or has it just been misunderstood? And how do moonshiners continue to operate in the modern world without facing the consequences of their actions? This piece aims to explore these questions, offering insights into the moonshiners' culture, the history of their trade, and how they skillfully navigate the complexities of legality and law enforcement. The history and nature of moonshininto. Understand the motivations and ethics behind moonshining, we need to delve into its history. Moonshining is believed to have its roots in the early days of the United States. Early American settlers, particularly in the Appalachian region, began distilling spirits to preserve surplus grain. Distillation allowed them to convert perishable crops like corn into a durable commodity that could be stored for longer periods. However, with the establishment of the federal government and its need for revenue, taxes were imposed on alcohol. The infamous Whiskey Rebellion of 1794, where American farmers protested the tax on their homemade whiskey, marked the beginning of the tension between government regulations and distillers. The most well-known chapter in moonshining history, however, occurred during Prohibition, 1920 to 1933. During this time, the production, sale, and transportation of alcohol were banned in the United States. This period led to the rise of illegal distilling operations and smuggling rings. Moonshiners flourished in the rural mountains, especially in the Appalachian region, where law enforcement had difficulty tracking them down. But what about today? Although Prohibition ended in 1933, moonshining didn't simply vanish. In fact, illegal distilling persists in many areas, albeit in a different form. What was once a direct rebellion against the government's laws has evolved into a modern-day subculture, supported by the demand for cheap, untaxed liquor. Are moonshiners a scam? Moonshining itself is not inherently a scam in the sense of fraudulent behavior. Historically, moonshiners were often rural farmers or families who distilled alcohol as a means of survival. They were creating their product for personal consumption or to trade within their communities, circumventing government-imposed taxes. In those early days, it wasn't a scam, but rather a way of life, born out of economic necessity. However, modern moonshiners can be considered to operate in a scam-like manner when they produce and sell spirits illegally for profit. This illicit trade often operates outside of the regulations that guarantee consumer safety. Without the oversight of federal regulations, moonshine can be dangerous, leading to product contamination, unsafe production methods, and health risks for consumers. Moonshiners who sell their product without proper safety standards may cut corners, and this lack of oversight can endanger the health of their customers. In extreme cases, moonshine can even be poisonous, as it may contain harmful levels of methanol, a byproduct of the distillation process that is toxic in large amounts. The perception of moonshining as a scam is primarily driven by the fact that these activities evade taxation and regulatory practices that exist to protect the public. While moonshiners may argue that they are engaging in a time-honored tradition or a victimless crime, the lack of consumer protections and safety standards makes it possible for deceitful operators to take advantage of the lack of government oversight. Modern moonshiners. How do they avoid being arrested? In today's world, moonshiners still exist, though their methods of evading capture have evolved. The moonshining trade is no longer just an outlaw subculture, but has also become a more organized, albeit illegal, industry. So, how do modern moonshiners manage to avoid arrest? 1. Remote locations and disguised operation. Zone of the primary ways moonshiners avoid detection is by operating in secluded, hard-to-reach locations. For centuries, remote areas of the Appalachian Mountains, swamps, and forests have served as ideal locations for illicit distilleries. The terrain and the difficulty of access deter law enforcement from launching effective raids, allowing moonshiners to continue their operations relatively undisturbed. In many cases, moonshiners build their stills in hidden locations, such as caves or dense woods. They carefully plan their routes to and from their sites to avoid detection. The operation is often spread out across multiple locations to reduce the risk of a complete bust. Stills are hidden, and signs of their activity, such as smoke. Use of technology and modern tools. Today's moonshiners have access to technology that helps them stay under the radar. Many use encrypted communication methods to keep in touch with suppliers, customers, and other members of their illicit network. They often employ sophisticated methods of transporting their product, using decoy vehicles and multiple handoffs to avoid detection during shipments. GPS and satellite imagery have also allowed moonshiners to track areas where law enforcement is patrolling and avoid those zones. Technology has also improved their distillation processes, making them more efficient and harder to detect. Mobile stills are now sometimes used, enabling operators to move their production equipment quickly if they sense they are being watched. 3. Subtle distribution networks. Moonshiners typically operate with an extensive covert distribution network. These networks often rely on local connections and trusted partners who know how to move the product through back channels without attracting attention. This underground distribution can involve everything from black market liquor stores to farmers markets, private gatherings, and even bars. The anonymity provided by a decentralized distribution system makes it much harder for law enforcement to target and shut down these operations. Customers often buy moonshine from known distributors or middlemen who further obscure the identity of the moonshiner. By keeping the chain of distribution secret and relying on trusted, tight-knit communities, moonshiners reduce their risk of detection for bribes and corruption. Unfortunately, in some cases, moonshiners may be able to buy protection from local authorities or corrupt law enforcement officers. This practice isn't universal, but it does exist in certain regions. By paying off local officials, moonshiners can continue their operations without fear of raids or busts. This dynamic is often more common in rural areas where law enforcement may be understaffed or underpaid, creating an environment in which moonshiners can take advantage of the system. Bribery or corruption undermines the efforts of authorities and allows illegal operations to thrive. This phenomenon is particularly problematic in areas with high poverty rates, where the temptation of an easy payout can outweigh concerns about breaking the law. 5. Sophisticated cover stories. In some cases, moonshiners may operate legitimate businesses on the side, using them as fronts for their illegal activities. For example, they may run a legitimate farm, garage, or even a restaurant while moonshining in secret. These cover stories give moonshiners a reason to have large quantities of certain materials or tools that might otherwise raise suspicion. For example, a moonshiner might claim that they are simply producing alcohol for personal use or as part of a homebrew hobby, as many states have laws that allow individuals to make a limited amount of alcohol for personal consumption. This claim can sometimes shield them from suspicion or reduce the likelihood of a police raid. The ethics and legality of moonshining. Despite the risks involved, moonshiners continue their trade because it offers both economic rewards and a sense of defiance. Many see themselves as rebels against a system that taxes their earnings and imposes restrictive regulations on what they view as a deeply ingrained tradition. For some, moonshining is not about making a quick buck, but about perpetuating a cultural practice that has existed for centuries. However, the ethics of moonshining remain contentious. While some argue that moonshiners are simply providing a product that meets the demands of a specific consumer base, others point to the potential dangers posed by unregulated alcohol production. Moonshine has been responsible for a number of health issues, including blindness, poisoning, and death due to improper distillation techniques. In modern times, while there are legal distillers who produce moonshine in a regulated and safe manner, the continued existence of illegal moonshining operations poses a threat to both consumers and the broader public health system. The debate over whether moonshiners are scammers hinges on the fine line between tradition, consumer protection, and the need for government oversight. Conclusion: moonshiners are not necessarily scammers in the traditional sense, but their illegal activities, often conducted outside of any regulatory framework, create risks for consumers and undermine government systems. While their operations may be seen as an act of rebellion against taxes or oppressive laws, the risks posed by unregulated production are undeniable. Modern moonshiners, using advanced techniques and technology, have adapted their methods to continue their trade without being caught by law enforcement. The culture of moonshining is deeply rooted in American history, and for some, it remains an emblem of independence and survival. However,